Hi everyone. Welcome to our end of financial year webinar on Single Touch Payroll. My name is Ken and I'll be your host for today's session. Just a few housekeeping notes before we start. All attendees will be automatically muted to minimize background noise. Please ask your questions in the Q&A section and we'll answer these as we go through the presentation. Today's webinar is specifically for users that have been reporting to the ATO via Single Touch Payroll. This video will take you through the process of end of financial year preparation and STP lodgement. In the webinar today, we'll cover the following. We'll start by taking a look at some relevant employee and business level settings that we strongly advise you to check before you start your end of financial year process. Then, I'll take you through our end of financial year STP wizard, creating and lodging a finalization event, and then notifying your employees. Lastly, we'll have a look at some ATO deadlines and provide some follow-up information. Before we get started, I wanted to mention that all of the information I'm showing you today can be found in our comprehensive end of financial year guide. But you can always access these guides and any other end of financial year information within our knowledge base articles. We'll be sending out a follow-up email with the end of financial year guide and have a recording of today's presentation. Now let's get started. We'll begin by taking a look at some of the employee and business details you should check on before you start your end of financial year process. Starting with employee details, we can check these in bulk using the Employee Details report. To access this report, we'll go to the Reports tab and then down to the Employee Details report. Within the report, you can add any data that you need to check to the Display Columns field. Some of the details we recommend checking include the employee's email address, their residential address, their tax file number, tax file declaration options such as working holiday maker status, and their single touch payroll status. Once you've entered these into the search, you can then run the employee details report. You can then see easily on screen any employees that may be missing or have invalid information. Email addresses for your employees are important because you'll be sending notifications to let them know that the end of financial year process has been finalized and their income statements will be tax ready in their MyGov portal. If an employee has not provided their employer with their tax file number on commencement of employment, the system will generate a special purpose TFN like 1111111. However, it's highly recommended that you try and obtain the employee's actual tax file number. If working holiday makers are part of your workforce, it's essential that the working holiday maker setting is correct and the home country, as per the employee's visa, is selected. Because working holiday makers are taxed differently, an incorrect classification may affect their tax return. The Single Touch Payroll field can be used to view an employee's closely held status or check for other STP income types. This is useful for businesses that have closely held employees that are reported on a quarterly basis and therefore need to lodge a separate finalization event. More on this later. This setting can be found under the STP income types in the employee's pay run defaults. Businesses with 19 or less employees who pay closely held pays were obligated to commence reporting STP events for those closely held employees from the 1st of July 2021. Closely held pays can be reported with STP via two methods, either per pay run or on a quarterly basis. The employees who are reported on a per pay run basis will automatically be included in the standard finalization event. Later in this webinar, we'll take you through the process of how to finalize closely held employees who are reported on a quarterly basis. The information on this screen can also be downloaded to an Excel spreadsheet if you prefer to view it this way. If you need to make any changes to employee details, do note that the process will vary depending on what you need to update. Our end of financial year guide will have more information on how to do this. Now let's move on to checking the business level settings. Let's look at the ATO settings first. For businesses that are exempt from fringe benefits tax, you'll find the relevant setting here on the ATO settings page. If the exemption applies to your organization, make sure you've selected this option. The FBT exemption can also be set at an employing entity level. If any of your employing entities are exempt, you'll need to go into Employing Entities and configure them. Let's take a look now. By default, this option is set to No, but as previously shown, you can select Yes if your employing entity is exempt. It's important to ensure that your fringe benefit tax settings are set up correctly because they will determine whether the reportable fringe benefit amounts for each employee is declared as tax-free or taxable in their income statement. If the setting is enabled, all reportable fringe benefit amounts reported per employee for that employing entity will be reported as tax-free. You should also check that the business fields for these employing entities have been correctly configured. Another point to mention is that from July 1st, 2013 to 2025, super guarantee rates will increase gradually from 9% to 12%. The system will automatically apply the increase across all businesses except in the following conditions. A business that does not have the automatically update super rates checkbox ticked in the payroll settings details screen, or the override checkbox in the super rate column in an employee's pay rate screen is ticked, or the override checkbox in the super rate column of any pay rate template is ticked. If any of the scenarios mentioned apply to a business and/or employee record and you want the super guarantee rate to automatically update, you must change your settings accordingly so that the automatically update super rates checkbox is ticked and the override checkbox in the employee's pay rate screen or pay rate template is not ticked. Okay, so next let's take a look at how your pay categories are set up. Go to Payroll Settings, then Pay Categories. If you're paying allowances to your employees that need to be reported separately for SDP, you'll need to make sure that the pay categories for these allowances have been configured correctly. To check the configuration for these allowances, we need to go into the relevant pay category and check the payment classification. You'll see that there's different options here for different available allowances. If you were to select Default, any earnings paid using this pay category would be attributed to the employee's gross payments. If you selected any of the allowance classification types, any amounts using these payment classifications would be reported separately in the SDP reporting as allowances. Also, as part of SDP Phase 2, there are other payment classifications used to indicate different payment types, such as bonuses, paid leave, and overtime. So you can see that I've set this up as a travel allowance, so I'm going to select Allowance Travel. This is just an example of classifying your pay categories, but there's a number of different payment classifications that can be used for various purposes. As part of SDP Phase 2, the ATO has new regulations around the disaggregation of gross income, so it's important to ensure that your pay categories are classified appropriately as per the ATO requirements. For example, annual leave is to be classified using the Leave, Other Paid Leave payment classification. We have guides available with more detail on the disaggregation of gross and information on payment classifications within our knowledge base articles. Now let's take a look at deduction categories. If you have employees that have deductions, there are specific settings that will need to be configured within the deduction category. Here, as you can see, we have system categories for a number of deduction types, including salary sacrifice super, workplace giving, union fees, and child support payments. If we take a look at the payment classification set up for union fees, for example, you can see that we've assigned the correct classification. This setting will ensure that the deductions are being identified separately. If you use our system deduction category for salary sacrifice super, then the correct classification will be assigned and the payment method is locked to be paid to a super fund. There have also been some recent changes regarding salary sacrificed amounts as part of SDP Phase 2. In SDP Phase 1, salary sacrificed amounts were not actually required to be reported. Instead, an employee's gross amount was reduced by any salary sacrificed amount, and it was that post-sacrifice gross amount that was then reported through SDP. Reporting salary sacrifice separately is a new requirement that was introduced in SDP Phase 2, which means that the gross amount reported will still be the pre-sacrificed amount. Let's take a look at an example of a correctly set up salary sacrifice super payment in this pay run. You'll notice that the method selected is to a super fund and that the employee's super fund has also been applied. The End of Financial Year Guide has instructions on how to identify if reportable employer super contributions have been set up correctly and how to fix it if required. Okay, so the next thing we're going to take a look at is pay runs. If we go back to the payroll dashboard and then down to the pay runs tab, we need to make sure that all of the pay runs for the financial year we're about to process have been finalized. Any unfinalized pay runs will be displayed at the top of the list here. It's important to note that any data from an unfinalized pay run will not be included in your STP reporting, including your finalization. So make sure that any relevant pay runs have been finalized. So you can see I've got one here that it's not finalized. So we'll click on that pay run, and then we'll go ahead and finalize the pay run. We'll also need to create and launch the pay event from that pay run as well. So while that pay event is being submitted, we'll go back to the pay runs list. Another quick thing to note while we're looking at the pay runs is the paid date of the pay run. You need to be aware that the paid date of any pay run is the date that is used to determine the financial year that the information within that pay run is attributed to. This is a handy tip if there are any discrepancies when you're reconciling your end of financial year figures. You need to make sure that the paid date of the pay runs that you're reconciling fall within the correct financial year. Now that we've covered off the relevant business and employee level settings in the system, we can go ahead and create the finalization event. To access the finalization event wizard, we can go to the Reports tab and then select Single Touch Payroll. You can see that all of the previous pay events and update events listed for the relevant financial year are displayed here. And then to start the finalization, all you need to do is select the Start Finalization Process option in the top right-hand corner. This will start the finalization wizard. The wizard requires you to complete a number of steps, making sure that you review all of the information that populates each step as you progress through the wizard. The first step is to select the financial year which you wish to process the finalization for. Here, you can see that it defaults to the current financial year. Then you can select the pay schedule. If you have multiple pay schedules set up in your payroll file, you'll need to do a finalization event for each of the pay schedules. We'll talk about the All Pay Schedules option in just a moment. Now keep in mind, this only includes pay schedules that are actually assigned to employees as their primary pay schedule. If you have an ad hoc pay schedule set up so that you can pay bonuses or make adjustments, this will not actually need to be finalized if it's not assigned to any employees as their primary pay schedule. So, you can either finalize each pay schedule separately, or you can now select All Pay Schedules to finalize all pay schedules at the same time. However, this option will only be available to businesses with fewer than 2,000 active employees. We'll have more information available in our End of Financial Year Guide and support articles about how to finalize using the All Pay Schedules option. At this point, there's also a cancel option if you don't wish to continue, but if you do wish to proceed, you can just click on Next, and this will take you to the next step in the wizard, which is confirming the payroll data. On this page here, you'll need to confirm that all of the pre-populated information is correct. The finalization event will populate with all employees attached to the selected pay schedule that have not been previously marked as is final. You'll find more information about the different scenarios here in our End of Financial Year Guide and our finalization support articles. Even if an employee is not appearing in the finalization event, they'll appear in the Excel year-to-date report for reconciliation purposes. If there are any validation issues in the event, they'll appear at the top here. The validation warning will have the details of what the issue actually is, as well as a link to the area of the system affected by the issue, so you can click on the link and go straight to the page where you need to make the adjustment. If you require any further assistance on the issue, we also have a link here to an article specifically designed for solving these validation issues. The validation warning I have here is related to this employee, and it's telling me the error is related to the employee's address. Now, if I select the employee's name, it'll take me directly to the employee details page where I can fix the address. And then once we've made that adjustment, we can just save those details for the employee. Then, if we go back to the finalization event, I'll need to refresh the information in the event for the change to be applied. To do this, use the Refresh Data option from the Actions menu. You can see that the information's now been updated and the validation warning has disappeared. Now that we've attended to the warnings, I'll show you a few other parts of the finalization event. If you need to look at certain employees in the event, you can filter the view by an employee's name or by an employing entity. The headings across the top will be familiar to you if you've been reporting pay events throughout the financial year. There are columns for the employee's name, income types, for example, closely held payees or working holiday makers, and other details such as POIG and salary sacrifice amounts. Now just a note, in the salary sacrifice column, this is where you'll see those salary sacrifice deductions that I showed you earlier in the presentation. Specifically, those classified as salary sacrifice super and salary sacrifice other employee benefits. Also, if an employee has been employed by more than one employing entity during the year, or has been switched from being a working holiday maker to a non-working holiday maker status, they'll appear in 2 rows. As you can see here, Jim has been employed by 2 different entities during the financial year. Another column here is labeled Is Final. This will automatically be ticked for all employees included in the finalization event and cannot be unticked. The Is Final option is locked because the entire premise of a finalization event is to mark all employees as Is Final so that the ATO is notified that there will be no further payments made for these employees in this financial year. This will then flag the employees as finalized with the ATO, and then the employee's income statement will be made available and labeled as tax ready. Now just above these headings, there is a download button. There are 2 reports available from here that can be used for end-of-year reconciliation. They are the Excel report and the Excel year-to-date report. The difference between these 2 available reports is that the Excel report will show you all of the information that has been populated by the finalization event, but only for the employees that were included in the event as you see it on screen here. The totals in this report will match the totals that appear at the bottom of each column on screen in the finalization event. The Excel year-to-date report is the report that you'll need to use for reconciliation. The year-to-date report includes, for all employees attached to that pay schedule, payroll data relating to all events previously lodged with the ATO for this financial year. This includes any employees that have been previously marked as final during the financial year and therefore did not appear in this finalization event. We strongly recommend that you perform a reconciliation at this point before you go any further with your finalization event. We have an article specifically designed to show you how to do your reconciliation, and you can search for this in our knowledge base articles. The last thing to mention on this page is the options you have across the bottom here. These options appear on each page during the wizard as well. There's a next button that will take you to the next step of the wizard, a back button that will take you to the previous page, and a save for later button, which will save the wizard at the page that you were on in the wizard. If you use this option, you'll be taken back to the Single Touch Payroll page, where you can then filter the screen for the relevant financial year to find that save finalization event. Then to go back into the wizard, select Continue Finalization. It'll reopen that event back up to the page you had it saved from. From here, we can select the Next option, which will take us to the next step in the wizard. This is where you can enter in any reportable fringe benefit amounts. If you had previously entered any fringe benefit amounts for your employees in a successfully lodged pay event, those year-to-date fringe benefit amounts would appear in the finalization event. Just be aware though that these amounts are a year-to-date figure, so if there's already an amount entered here, it needs to be changed so that you add in the total year-to-date amount. You also need to make sure that you're entering in the grossed up amounts here. You can enter the amounts manually by clicking on the individual pencil icon next to each employee's name, entering in the amounts, and then clicking Save. Alternatively, if you have a number of employees that do require reportable fringe benefits to be added, we do have a bulk import function that you can use. You can use the Export button to export a template, which you can then fill in with the relevant figures and then import back into the system. You can access this function through the Actions menu. You can see here that there are 2 options, which are exporting the template and then importing the data back into the finalization event. So first, we'll select the Export RFBA template option. This will download a copy of the RFBA template in Excel format, which we can fill in with the relevant figures. This is what the spreadsheet will look like. It'll show a list of all of the employees within the finalization event, separated by tabs representing each pay schedule. So let's go ahead and enter the amounts, and then let's save the spreadsheet. Now we can go back to the finalization event where we can use the Actions button, but this time to import the reportable fringe benefit amounts by selecting the Bulk Import RFBAs option. Then we can just select the file. Once the upload is complete, you can see that all of the information has now been populated with these amounts. Once you're finished with the reportable fringe benefit screen, you can just click on the Next button to proceed. The next section is for entering any foreign tax paid. You should note that this section will only display if you have any employees who are classified with the STP income type of foreign employment income. If you don't have any foreign employment employees, this step will be skipped. On this screen, you can enter in the amount of foreign tax paid. You should also note that if you try to proceed past this step without entering in any foreign tax, a warning message will appear. So let's enter in a foreign tax amount and then proceed. This takes us to the last step of the finalization event, which is lodging the event. If you're a registered tax or BAS agent lodging on behalf of a business, you will need to follow the same process that you normally do with lodging other pay events where a client authority is required. In order to proceed, you'll need to read and accept the authorization and declaration, and then tick the box to acknowledge. After that, you can just click on the Lodge Event button. This event will then be submitted to the ATO. From this point, you can go back to the payroll dashboard, or you can go to the event details screen to see the submission processing status. If we go back to the Single Touch Payroll screen, we can see that the finalization event has been successful. In order to submit a finalization for closely held employees reporting on a quarterly basis, you can start the finalization process as we did previously. However, this time, select the option Closely Held Employees. This option will only appear for businesses that have employees classified as closely held and are reporting on a quarterly basis. This will start the finalization wizard and display the same steps as we had before in the main finalization, but this will be focused on any closely held employees reporting on a quarterly basis. The next thing that needs to be done is sending out the system-generated email notifications to the employees included in the finalization event. This is to let them know that their income statement can now be accessed via their MyGov account. Navigate to the finalization event via the ID number and then go to the Actions button again. This time, there's a Send Notifications option. Once we click here, this will automatically send out the emails for all of the employees that have been included in the event. And now you can see on the Lodgement Details tab that all of the notifications have been sent. So what will the notification look like? This is what the notification email will look like, and the body of this email is fixed and cannot be edited or customized in any way. You can see here in the email there's a bit of extra information that will hopefully assist the employees. There's a link to create a MyGov account if they don't already have one. There's a short explanation about not being provided with a payment summary now that their income has been reported directly to the ATO. There's also a link where they can access other general information about how STP has changed the end-of-year process for an employee. I will also just mention a couple of things to note with regards to the employees accessing their income statements. The ATO only makes the income statements available to the employee via their MyGov account, and their employers do not have access to it at all. The income statement will not be available via the Payroll Employee Portal or WorkZone. Previously, employees were able to access their payment summaries from their employee portal, but this is not the case with income statements. If an employee cannot create or access a MyGov account for any reason, they can request their income statement directly from the ATO. Okay, so that's pretty much all that's required to end the financial year using the STP finalization wizard. I'll just go over a few other items that need to be mentioned. The first is deleting a finalization event. If you've created a finalization event in error, it may still be possible to delete it. Note though, you can only delete an event that has not been successfully lodged to the ATO. Once the event has been submitted, there's no longer an option to delete it. I'll show you how to do this with another finalization event for a different business. If you're partway through and realize you've created the event in error, click on the Save for Later option. This will save the event on the Single Touch Payroll page. Now back on that page, if we open the event via the event number as opposed to the continual finalization label, you can see the option to delete the event. And then you can see that the event has been deleted. The next thing I'll show you is how to create an amended finalization event. If you've already successfully lodged your finalization event and then found something that needed to be changed, you can make the adjustment, but then, in order to update the end of financial year totals with the ATO, you will need to lodge an amended finalization event. To do this, from the Single Touch Payroll page, you'll see a drop-down arrow next to the Start Finalization Process button. This will create an amended finalization event. This process is very similar to the finalization event that we just covered. First, you'll need to select the financial year and the pay schedule. Then, you'll see a different option appear which will allow you to select the employees that you'd like to include in the amended event. The event will default to include all of the employees that are attached to the pay schedule that you've selected, or alternatively, you can select the drop-down menu and select specific employees. So if you only need to submit an amended event for a few employees, you can select them from the list and only those employees will populate the event. You can then select Next to proceed with the amended finalization event. From here, the process is exactly the same as the finalization event. Once we're back on the Single Touch Payroll page, you can see the difference in labeling between a finalization event and an amended finalization event. Just before we finish up, here are a few reminders on deadlines. If you have both closely held payees and arm's length employees, your finalization declaration for your closely held payees is due by the 30th of September each year. You must still make a finalization declaration for your arm's length employees by the 14th of July. If you have only closely held payees, you have until the due date of the closely held payee's individual income tax return to make a finalization declaration for a closely held payee. If you think you'll need more time, please contact the ATO directly. Please note that WPN holders will continue to be exempt from STP reporting until the 1st of July 2023. However, if you are a WPN holder and want to start reporting earlier than the 1st of July 2023, you will need to use a registered tax or BAS agent to do it on your behalf. This is because the ATO currently does not support electronic lodgements directly from WPN holders. A recording of this video will be uploaded to our YouTube channel and we'll also be sending out a follow-up email to everyone that has attended today. This will include a recording of the presentation as well as our end of financial year STP guide. This concludes our presentation. We'll stay online for another 5 or 10 minutes to answer any further questions you may have. Just a reminder to pop those in the Q&A section. Thanks for joining us.